Okay, great. Good afternoon. This is House Transportation Committee on Thursday, February 23rd. And we're continuing our work on the governor's proposed FY24 budget. Let me back up on the draft of the transportation bill that we have been working on. So as the committee knows, crossover is a coming. So I thought we needed to start to get into the work of the policy bill. And I thought a good place to start would be the language that we have before us, and we've been hearing testimony from the agency and others. So I think it's a good place for us to begin this work. So we have our legislative counsel, Anthea Dexter Cooper, here with us. And I think what I'd like to be able to do is just to start to go through the bill to see where the committee is on the language here, as a way to start. And so here we go. Anthea.
Okay, so for the record, Anthea Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel. I am going to be working through draft 2.2, which is the draft you got yesterday, and we just went through the changes, but it's dated 2/18/2023, 7:20 p.m., and I will put it up on my screen so that everyone is able to see it.
Great.
One sec. The wrong document open. Here we go. Okay, so can everyone see that?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
Did everyone
so
read it okay? Okay,
I can make it a little bigger too.
Make it a teensy bit bigger, yeah.
Okay, so we still have our disclaimer at the top, still the agency's proposal that you're working through, but it is your proposal to change. Your first section, this is going to be sort of the sleeper section, because it doesn't seem like a lot's happening here, but so much is happening in subsection A because you're adopting the entirety of the white book. So when I talk about how you need to pretend that the white book is clipped to the back of the T-bill, this subsection A is why I say that. So by including subsection A in the bill, you would be adopting the entire white book, except as you amend the white book in the bill itself. One thing I'll point out here is you'll see on line 8, it says revised January 27th, 2023. So this is incorporating incorporating all of the updated pages that you got when the agency came and switched your tabs and made the other changes.
Right, so just for the committee, we just had an example of that just before lunch. So that will be reflected in here. That was around the Missisquoi Basin project, for example. There was a change in the dollar. I should back that was one of. Right.
Is that something new, or is that going to be addressed in the technical correction for the municipal mitigation? I didn't listen to all your testimony.
Oh, I think it's there. I think you have it right there. Yeah. So I was just trying to give an example of what we'll see here.
Yeah, so subsection B, these are going to be your definition sections. They're pretty standard from year to year. You'll see some of the definitions are reflecting one of the later pages in the white book that has the glossary and the definition of terms. And then subsection C, not something you have every year, but a technical correction. This is, as your chair was just saying, what you were dealing with this morning. So this is included in this section not to be reflected as an instance where the committee, the General Assembly, is making an amendment to the agency's proposal, but the agency is saying, we made a mistake, this number is wrong, and it's being reflected as the correction of a typographic error. So that's what you have in subsection C. And I will pause at the end of each section if that works for the committee.
That sounds great.
Okay.
So I think I don't see any questions. Sorry, I didn't really, I was writing things down. Sorry, Anthea.
Okay, great. So section 2, this is the rail trail community connectivity grants. Subsection A is adding the project to the white book. So this is one of those amendments. It's authorizing it at $3 million in one-time general fund monies. Like all of the other authorizations, they need to be backed up by the appropriations in the big bill. And this will be reflected as a general fund appropriation if this committee and your House Appropriations Committee goes with the same approach. Subsection B gives the purpose. The purpose of the rail trail connectivity grants is to continue the build out of and enhancement of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail with amenities and visitor experiences, and it shall be consistent with the priorities outlined in the recently completed LVT management plan. Eligible projects are those that include trail infrastructure improvements, trailheads, picnic areas, kiosks, and connections to towns, signage, and interpretive panel installations. And then the new language that you saw yesterday, this is from the governor's recommend for the budget bill, to have all of the language in one place, knowing that you might end up having it move between bills, has the match requirement, and grant recipients shall be required to provide a 20% match toward any projects that are awarded a grant.
Okay, so you're pausing between those. This is the first section that we had testimony today on this, so we might want to have some discussion as a committee on some of this. And I would think now is the time to do that. We can either do, I think it is helpful, we can come back to this too, but I think now's the time to have the discussion. I don't know if we need to be deciding on the money right now because we haven't done our first walk through the overall budget, but just as Anthea described, like this is in the language of our bill, and the money is in, request for the funding is in the big bill, the Appropriations Committee, and we will be making a recommendation to that committee about the money. But I think let's pause for a moment to have some discussion. Go ahead.
I'm not going to the money yet, so that's good. We'll have a good discussion. I'm concerned that this is just a grant program. It's just limited to the LVRT. Once the LVRT is built out, there are other rail trails in Vermont that could use a similar treatment. And I'm just wondering to you all and to Anthea whether we should expand that language to make this a potential ongoing community grant program.
So to the extent that that's a question directed to me, I would say that that's a policy decision, and I have not heard the extent of the testimony that you have heard.
But that's for the committee. That's at the heart.
Exactly.
So this is time for Representative McCoy.
So my concern with that is that's going to be based on if there's money available 3 years from now. So my concern is, okay, we're going to build up the LVRT with all these interpretive signs, and, kiosks and picnic areas and trailheads, and then there's not going to be any money left for the D&H or the BB Pond 1 or the MVRT. That's my concern.
Others, Representative Dodge?
Yeah, I mean, I would be concerned about that too. I think that's why we should keep it the way that the language is set. If we are to assign any money to it or to recommend that it says a one-time, and they kind of had this, and this is money that's going to be leveraged at a matched for 20 to 80. So if we're looking at bang for your buck, and like if we've invested all this money into the rail trail, I mean, I also have the concern of like, what about the other regions and the other trails? But I mean, when we look at it, it covers a lot of towns, a lot of regions. It could have a massive benefit being along the Canadian border, So, I know that we're.
But we built ours up for a heck of a lot less money than, we didn't even expend like a tenth of what's been expended on this LVRT so far. And I think we have 2 million from last year, and they're asking for an additional 3 this year.
Well,
that doesn't include the 6
congressional,
expended.
and this doesn't include the 6.3 million for the bridges.
Correct.
So, I mean, it just keeps, this is all we need, and then they come back, oh, no, this is what we need to complete. And now we're back this year and it's like, oh, no, we need another 6.3 million. And you're fully aware of that,
I
being on corrections institutions.
expressed my concerns in our earlier discussion with the folks, so I have some concerns. This is not gonna be our only time. This is for the newer members. This is like, we're going through it the first time. I'm gonna flag it that I'm hearing some concerns about this, and Michelle is here with us, so.
So I'll make one last, a lot more mess comment for you, is there's two things that are positive in Montpelier. The sun never sets, and one time doesn't exist. We've seen one-time money continue on from year to year. One-time money becomes an appropriation, so it's always open to interpretation. So I can see this connectivity grant going on and on and on, which might be a good thing to do, to have that discussion.
And maybe, Michelle, maybe I'll just say what I said earlier since you were not in the room with us. So the question that I had was, I was curious, like, is there a way for some of this to be incorporated in an existing program that like whether it's bike ped or like, I know the testimony that we heard is, we understand how specific it is. I'm gonna say, like, this is a really an incredible asset that the state of Vermont has, all our trail system, you know that, right? And so part of it for me is about a geographic equity question. And also I know when we come down to other things that we might want to do, I have a bit of a question mark here of like, this committee, we have to like weigh, want versus needs, or, we have to prioritize. So I have some questions about this. So, but that's what I shared earlier. And I just wanted you, Michelle, to have the benefit of hearing that too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I just did want to clarify to Representative Dodge's point, this is state-only funding. It doesn't leverage any federal dollars for this particular proposal.
Oh, so
20% local.
20% like town.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Just to clarify.
So good clarification. The $3 million that's being requested is state funds that have to be matched at a local level by town municipalities, or
20% of the
20%. Yeah. Representative Walker? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll be coming. Did you?
Well, no, I was just saying the way I look at this is sort of like in the bigger picture, there's sort of like three questions. First of all, do we support this program generally? And if we do support it, do we support it at the $3 million level? And then thirdly, would we still support this if that money disappeared? Because it clearly says general fund money. So in the bigger, and I think the chair was going with this, in the bigger scheme of things, where would this rank within our committee if we have other ideas of, not saying for or against, but, the public transit piece there, we're talking about that. There are other pieces, it's easy to spend somebody else's money, is what we're doing. But if we have to look into our pockets, where does this rank within a priority? So definitely a question mark for me, probably in all three.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And Tim, that's a really great framework, that we might consider using. Do we support the program, when it's a money question at the second part at the level, and where does this fit as our priorities? I think that could be a useful lens to bring to this. How does that sound?
Yeah, and the other issue also is, what is put in here with the trailheads, 5 miles, I guess currently it's 5 miles, but they're looking for 3.5 miles. I mean, that could be a money saving thing, that you only have it every 5 miles instead of the 3.5. That might be the pie in the sky that may put the project yet over what we're currently considering. So that's just my point. I think it's like Tim, I think this is a great, I have no issues with the LVRT.
Yep.
The issue I have, it's like this monster that keeps coming back for more money. Every year we're told this is it. And then the next year we come back to this committee, it's like, nope, we need this money. And then the next year, I've been on here 5 years and I'd like to know how much we've the total amount we've given over 5 years between corrections and institutions, capital bill, transportation, and the general fund. I'd love to know that figure.
And just so you know, we did ask that question of Joel a few days ago, and when he was in today, he said he should be sending me something later today or
Okay.
tomorrow morning. So we will share that with the committee. Yep. Representative Burke?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, we put a lot of money into constructing this, as well as the money for construction. And it's almost done, and we're doing this section, next section. So you have this thing, and we've gotta, maintain it, and we've gotta make it usable. And I can't just leave it there. I think I'll be interested to hear the impact on the towns, because it's going through some quite rural towns, quite a few. And what would be that impact, and what does that benefit to the state in terms of, tax receipts and things like that? So I think that we need more information, but I also feel that it's a really great project, and it would be nice if all the trails had those same resources. And, in terms of we have the rail priority plan, we know it's to Montreal, maybe getting another train up the Connecticut River line is gonna be down in the queue. But to at least maybe know that that's on the queue, that's on the radar. We are hoping this is our long range plan for these trails. Might be helpful.
An overall plan.
Hmm?
A priority.
A priority plan for the trails, for the 4 trails.
Representative Couch, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I see the need to provide access. I mean, if you've got to get in your car, put your family in the car, drive 20 miles and park on the side of the road to get to it, the quicker you can get to it and access it and connect to towns, I think the better. It's a question. I mean, clearly, the expectation, once there is a management plan for the other ones, they're going to identify areas that also, although, a 93-mile one, provides lots of places where you might want access. A shorter one may only have a couple, but still, I think you do need the access points.
I think there are,
access.
and that might be more information to get. I know I've visited once we funded it, the Capitol bill, I wanted to go up and see it, and there are access points.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful trail. I mean, it's beautiful, and I think, maintaining it, there's money that's coming out, so, but yeah, that might be some more information. So, okay, Representative.
Question, can we reserve part of that money? So release $2 million for LVRT and reserve $1 million for future projects of the same type on other trails? Is that a viable possibility?
Well, they do say the legislature can do anything it wants, but I don't know. I mean, I think what that might, I can't say definitively. I mean, but we don't usually, we do put certain things aside, like certainly have done it with the EV program. So, so what I'm hearing is I think maybe we make this, the committee is not unified on this yet. So, I've made some notes on it. We'll be coming back to pass it. And if whether it's now or, mention to me if there's more specific information that people want, if we need more testimony. I think we've heard from I don't know if we need more testimony. We're not gonna have a lot of time. But if we're gonna get that information about what's been invested over the last several years. So I think we're gonna continue to move through, Kate, so just what we're doing is we're working through the latest draft of the, I just want to make sure that you knew where we were.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I should just finish this up, but.
This is not about finishing up the grant, this is the connectivity grants, which is different. The rail trail has been completed, so this is, just to be specific, this is about community connectivity grants.
Well, that's what I thought we were talking about, yes, and I actually do, I think they'll pay for themselves personally in leveraging the economic development potential that's there. So I kind of a maybe more holistic approach to looking at it, which may be beyond what, we're asked to do here. So, but,
All right, I see. Representative Walker?
I just want to make sure I understand that the $2 million was the earmark from Senator Sanders, and then
Which is not in this language.
But it's been talked about, right? And then the 3 million is general fund money, but would come through our bill, but it's general fund. The 6.3 million or the 6 million, is that in bike ped, or where does that?
Let me just back up. So when you say it comes through our bill,
It's in this, it says general fund.
This language in our bill, it becomes part of the appropriations bill. And what often will happen they might take this language and put it with the money, but it's also, our bill becomes part of the appropriations bill. Does that?
It's a policy.
Where does the $6 million show up in the bike ped part that we went through?
The bridge, the two
The
bridges.
bridge, $60 bridges.
It was in
bike ped?
It was in Joel's.
Remember the
Which one?
gentleman came in the other day and they need two bridges?
Money you were talking about, we
for
needed two more, we're gonna use
It's in the
these.
bike ped.
We're using the railroad trusses and whatnot, that's in bike
The bike
ped
ped.
section, that's what I wanted to
Okay.
just clarify. Thank you.
And that's not necessarily, that's for the trail itself,
For those,
the bridges.
That's the completed part.
That's
well,
the
that's what I
completed-
just wanna make sure I
two
understood that,
bridges,
and they're
yeah.
using some trestle bridges from somewhere
Not
else.
quite complete.
They got these big things sitting on the side of the road at Route 15 to put in there that came from somewhere, that's part of the $6 million that's in bike ped, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Was it bike ped or was it Carolyn's? No, it was in Joel's
Joel's.
section,
It was
yeah,
Joel's.
so it was in the bike ped,
Like
yeah.
that.
Okay,
So,
The Sanders money is in bike ped and construction
I
money.
was like, Sanders?
Bernie's, it was in a
Sanders?
I thought that's the name I heard.
Okay.
I
It
don't
was
know.
a congressional earmark, this past year, a lot of our communities benefited from Leahy's earmarks and Senator Sanders and then Congressman Welch's earmark. So it doesn't hit here, but that's something that we learned through the testimony. Right, yeah? Yeah?
By mistake, we
Yeah.
learned it, but.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'm finding it's in our white book. I'm happy to, I have it flagged.
Wait, where's the, is this the 3 million we're talking about or the 2 million?
No. This is
Tell me the
something,
bridges.
6 million.
Oh, the 6 million for the
yeah,
bridges.
to Representative Walker's question, he was asking us.
That's in bike ped.
Yeah, it came up in the testimony that we received, was that yesterday?
I don't know, it's like Dave's
Only
confused,
yesterday.
yeah.
So, yeah.
It just seems like weeks ago.
Yeah. So, and that was, and if people look for, tab 5G on page,
It's on page 24.
24, yeah. And on page 25, the top of page 25.
Still about the rail trail.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Anthea, I think this is a question for you, because if we keep this in and it passes, it becomes law, not session law, correct?
Well, there's no difference. Both is law.
Okay, but this will be in the green books.
Apologies, I had to leave to get someone to take a nap. They're asleep now. Are you still
So this
talking
is-
about section 2?
We're still on the rail trail,
Okay,
the
yeah.
rail trail community connectivity grant.
So,
That will be in the green book. This is gonna be.
no, this is session law. So
Oh,
the
this-
way that you can tell is it doesn't have in the
Doesn't have a-
section language, it doesn't say like 23 VSA or 19
Okay. I
VSA.
didn't see that part. It was up on the screen. Okay, all right. That was my other thing, because this is specific to one rail trail. To be stuck in a green book.
Right, so it wouldn't be in the green books.
Correct.
Right.
Now I see that.
Causing all kinds of trouble for you.
You are.
I know, we're juggling all
On
over.
your, on your toes.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Representative Dodge.
We've just transmogrified.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So was the request for the bridge fixes along the rail trail, did they fall in line with the obligations of maintenance, sort of overall like rail trail maintenance obligations?
No, they're construction, they were in the.
Yeah, but I think to your point, yeah, I mean, that's all, I mean, you could look at it both ways, I mean, it's construction, but I think they overlooked something because they were hurrying up to finish it, but that's, I would consider it sort of like maintenance, right? In a sense, in another sense, it's a full-blown new bridge,
Yeah.
but yeah, you could probably look at it either way, depending on what lens you want to see at it. Just looking at it as not,
It's hard, yeah, it's hard to call it like a bike ped when it's,
yeah,
you know, it's bridges,
yeah,
but,
I remember the testimony that we got was that it's not, they're not repairing the bridges for rail.
For rail.
It's for bike and pedestrian weight, right? That's the, I
Yeah.
believe, is it
But then they
right?
also said that we had
Emergency
some,
vehicles.
And emergency vehicles, yeah.
which, yeah, so, okay.
All right,
We
well,
get no Fed money
so-
for doing.
so I have a lot of notes, I hope other people do too, so we're gonna pin this as, you know, that there was some discussion, we'll come back to this. So, thank you, Anthea, I hope that, so now we're making progress, section 3.
I just say that I appreciated the very lengthy discussion that I didn't hear all of because it let me get my kid back to sleep. So I am good for the rest of your
We're working
testimony.
together.
we do our part to put your kid to sleep there.
I appreciate the committee discussion.
We're trying to put you to sleep.
Top of four.
Okay, so section 3, this is the St. Albans District Maintenance Facility. This is another one of those projects that's being added to the White Book, but it is not transportation fund dollars as proposed by the administration. So it'd be adding it to the White Book. It would be in maintenance, and it would be an authorization of $3.5 million in one-time capital fund operating monies to build the St. Albans District Maintenance Facility.
All right, so this is one that we will be working with our colleagues in the House Corrections and Institutions Committee. We received some testimony on this. I think people saw as I'm recalling, there was a video, right, showing from the driver's seat of the, you know, just to remind folks what that was. And so I know that the House Corrections and Institutions Committee took testimony on this. You did go, our vice chair also went in to hear some of that testimony.
Yes, tab 27.
This is one of the areas for the committee that, you know, we have some, this is the policy committee that knows about our highway maintenance vehicles and needs and everything. So we'll be having some input on this decision as well, but I feel like it's good we have the tougher stuff at the beginning. This bill, maybe. Go ahead, Representative McCoy.
So the one-time $3.5 million, is that for the purchase of the property and entire construction of the building, or
Part of the whole project.
part of the whole project?
Project, think of it.
Do we know how much, how much?
6 or 7 million,
6 or 7 million, okay.
I think.
So this is just part of the project, okay.
Well, the book indicates 6.5 million. Yeah, 3 from here and 3 from 25 is what it
Can you
says.
say that again?
The back, page 20, or the tab 27 indicates 6.5 million, 3 million from general fund and 3.5 million from capital, for 6.5 million for the whole
So that's
project.
the whole project.
That's two projects.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's the 3 million for the Lamoille Valley
Oh,
Rail Trail
yeah.
and the 3.5.
that's not, okay.
And you get a lot of money out there, Representative Walker.
But the capital.
That's the total for one time, not transportation fund dollars.
You're right. It's a real connectivity grant. There you
No,
go.
but you said this was a $7 million project. There's
The
only
garage. The garage is 6 or 7 million.
So where is
So
that?
the other part is in the capital budget? Is that's my question. We've got 3.5 million here.
That's capital.
Oh, that's the capital.
That's what I'm saying. Where's the other half?
Where's it? So,
Canceled the Lunenburg garage.
oh, capital fund operating money.
It's last year. They didn't get bids on it.
So they currently have money sitting on the bottom line that they're gonna utilize?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, yeah, Michelle.
If you look at the transportation buildings tab,
Yeah.
the details might be there. And honestly, I'm not sure if this is a 2-year project, so only half the money is proposed for it. there is additional funding within the maintenance or the buildings budget line for the remaining funds that are needed.
So the testimony they gave downstairs was canceling Lunenburg because they didn't get any bids on it. Take that money and pull it into, transfer that money over to this project.
So that sounds like that would be helpful information for the trust to get, and then we might be able to find.
Yeah, wouldn't me, yeah, how's that, where's the other half coming from?
Yep.
Right.
In what year will that be expended?
And sometimes the way that projects in the capital bill goes, they span 2 years and they will, but I think we need to get a little.
Well, it's just more about presentation. Are we worried about the actual construction of it, or is our question just worrying about the maintenance costs of it, you know, once it's built? You know.
Oh, so is the question whether all of it's gonna come out of capital money?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, like, if it's, they're building the whole thing and then it just comes back on us as far as, you know, maintaining.
Maintaining the building.
I'm just making some notes here. I know that they took some pretty extensive testing. I know that some of this will depend on whether, you know, this is some money that is this one-time capital fund operating money. This is something that's in the new, what's the right word?
Pay-as-you-go fund.
Yeah, it's a new construct within the capital budget and that was set up last year. So it's not being funded with bonded dollars. That's what the proposal is, that it be funded if they go.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there are a couple more questions about this. We could, we could certainly, we could find that some of the testimony, there was a presentation. I have to say, the presentation that we got, I don't recall did you?
I think they already purchased the property.
They did.
So that's that's done. So now it's just that this 3.5 will be for, like, I think they want to run the sewer line or sewer water from into the property that isn't there yet because it's vacant space, and then construct the building. I don't know how much that'll cost.
The date, sorry? I'm just looking for the testimony. So it sounds to me like what I'm hearing the committee is that we might need a refresher on the testimony, some more information on the testimony. Is that what I'm hearing, or do
Well,
we need to just find
Michelle,
out?
knows what we're talking about. She could just get back to us. I don't think we need somebody to come in and do a whole.
No, not more,
So just in Brad McAvoy's testimony, they have purchased the land, according to what Brad said.
So is that part of the 7 million?
I don't.
Oh, yeah, that's what I
No,
want.
they've already purchased those.
This is, they purchased it for $499,000, I remember. So, Michelle, maybe we could just get a little bit more information on that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to move us to the next topic. So the project cancellations and Anthea, section 4.
Yep, so section 4, this is where you've got your 2 project cancellations in subsection A and subsection B and your 1 project addition. In most instances, the General Assembly needs to approve the cancellation of a project, and that's under 19 VSA section 10G subsection H. That's your lead-in language, and it's canceling the Bennington bypass project. And I know you had testimony on that yesterday from Michelle, and then the swapping in subsections B and C of the Sheldon bridges.
So this should be pretty fresh testimony that we had yesterday. Was it yesterday too? Yes, it was.
I think it was yesterday.
I think we know there's some, I think there's some concerns about subsection A, that project.
Yeah, you know,
That
my
we-
thoughts clearly, I would
Yeah.
like to make a motion to take it out. When we get there.
when we get there, so. Michelle?
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify a piece of information I received since yesterday relative to the Bennington bypass project. The only way to use that right of way that we own for other activities such as a trail or pathway or other transportation project is to close out the Bennington bypass project and get it canceled from the program. So that might be something to consider in your deliberations.
As a committee,
You said I can worry about that. I stand firm.
and so that's good, that's good information, and then, and Sheldon, how do folks, people have it, is any, are people okay with this? I'm just, some things would like want to say, okay, right, check, okay, this might, the B and C might be, okay, all right. Okay. So I think we're ready for section 5, Anthea.
Okay, so section 5, these are the additions of the positions within the Agency of Transportation. This is not the Department of Motor Vehicles positions that are added or proposed to be added through the big bill. And this is your 9 state airport maintenance workers and 1 state airport operations specialist, and then your 1 transportation operations technician 3 and 1 transportation technician 4, and both of those are within highway maintenance. So if this is something that the General Assembly wants to move forward with, then the second question will be, does this language stay in the T-bill or does it go in the big bill? But your first question is whether or not you support the proposal from the administration to create these new positions.
Right, so we heard about section B today and section A earlier this session, in the session. And I think I just am reading from my notes about the airport positions, that these had been limited service positions in the past, and then these are being, they're going to become permanent positions. So I guess to me this is pretty straightforward, but I want to make sure that I don't think, you know, we built this bridge in Grand Isle. I think we need to be able to operate it. There's today the testimony is pretty clear that about what the requirements are. Discussion.
The limited service positions, as I recall, they were limited service technically, but actually we had them as ongoing positions. Is that right?
That was my understanding from the testimony.
Is that correct?
Subsection A with the airport positions. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, my understanding is that this is not gonna have a,
Budgetary impact.
yeah.
Right.
Because people have been working there. They were,
Okay. Have we gotten to section B yet?
We're right there now, I think.
and then we're there right now. Go ahead, Representative McCoy.
So are these the ones we talked about this morning?
Yes.
The bridge?
Yes, the section B, yeah. So I'm looking around the room, are people?
That one was the 250,000.
Yeah.
They are also spending, no, they're not spending it now.
Right, these would be new positions, we built a bridge, the way that this new bridge is gonna be operating, requires different kind of maintenance and staffing. It would kind of be too bad if we had a bridge that had no staff.
It would be. I gotta wash off all that salt.
And it would really
It's a bridge job.
pay the person that can't do the job.
Yeah. Representative Walker?
Yes, thank you. Just for history or clarification, an HR position or the actual, all the way down to this level in the law, does it seems really in a, I'm sorry?
Detailed.
Yes, and seems like, I don't know, it seems really down in the weeds. And it also seems like by naming it so specifically, et cetera, are we limiting some options of HR in the future of the agency? I'm
No, where are you seeing HR?
I'm saying that when you name a specific title, position, and description, it seems like we're really into some kind of human resources or some kind of personnel management, maybe that's a better way, that way down into the law. Is that common to go that way down? Are we limiting a potential management of these positions in the future?
Yeah, it's standard procedure.
It's standard procedure. Okay.
Because they're new positions. Positions limitations, say that. Michelle has her hand up. Help me, get me out of this.
No, you're right on the spot.
Still
Positions, when they are created by the legislature, they have to be very specific. Now, the agency can work through the Department of Human Resources to request a reclassification of the position. And the reclassification can change the job title and the job functions and the job pay grade and those sort of things to move the position elsewhere within the agency if the need is no longer there for the original purpose, that sort of thing. So there are mechanisms to manage with the positions we have, but the creation of new positions is it's a very thoughtful and deliberative process, I'll just say.
Okay. Thank you.
Bartholomew.
Is this position in the bill because it didn't get into the white book, or would it normally be in the bill as well to add?
Let me ask Anthea that question.
So positions are not created in the white book. The white book is like the plan for how the money is going to be spent. My experience over the last few years is that positions are normally created, reclassified through this process in the big bill. And I cannot speak to why this language was not proposed for inclusion in the big bill with the other DMV positions. But this is the sort of thing that is usually done either in the big bill or through the Joint Fiscal Committee process. And Chris is there. He might have a better explanation from the JFO side of things.
If I may, Madam Chair, Chris Ripp, Joint Fiscal. The only thing I would add to what Anthea said was if the committee decides to put this language in the T-bill, I do expect that when the T-bill goes to the Appropriations Committee, that the Appropriations Committee will strip this language out and put it in the big bill. So that is sort of a standard operating procedure that the appropriators do, is they like to have all the positions sort of listed in one place, just like they try to have as many of the appropriations listed in one place. So my recommendation to the committee would be it is probably a good idea to have whatever you want reflected in the T-bill. Just understand that when this bill makes its stop at appropriations, that language may get lifted out and put in the other bill.
Give it to them now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really needed. It's sort of, I agree with Chris. I think it's typically never in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did flag it with a conversation with the chair of appropriations, so she knows. And it might just be that they just want to make sure that this committee is seeing it, and then it will go over there. I think that's is probably what this is. So, go ahead.
The total appropriations request is for $250K.
Not for both of them. So let me just be clear. The limited service positions for the airport, is that for the $250,000 is B, and that shows up in our budget, in the transportation budget, in the maintenance section.
And I just was clarifying that is for the two positions that were described, and then that part-time person, correct? That's right, okay.
Yeah. We get a number for A or no?
I don't know if we got a number.
For
9 positions.
For the 9 positions.
For the airport.
I know they're positioning, just in case we get asked.
Yeah, so I can get you a number for the 10 positions for aviation. I don't have that off the top of my head because it is built into our personnel line.
Because it's already there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we might, it's a good point. Someone's gonna ask us, yeah. But other than getting the figure, are people okay with these this section? All right. All right, and say no more, it's section 5. So now we're going on to section 6, the central garage fund. Now, Anthea, we just heard about this today, remember? Yep.
So this is proposed changes to codified law. It's the section in Title 19 that creates the central garage fund and says how it's supposed to be used. The first couple of changes that you have, the striking of 2 and the addition of 2 on lines 10, 11, and 14 are technical changes. And then you get into the substantive changes that are being proposed by the agency. I don't know if you need me to go through them since you had testimony about this earlier today, but happy to walk through the language after the non-technical pieces. It's up to the committee.
Yeah. So we had some discussion today. I don't want to, Representative Walker, did you want to ask any of your questions that you had earlier today? I mean, Anthea, do you feel like
I don't.
the history of I just want to give you an this might be if you have any lingering concerns.
I guess Anthea, you said you didn't watch.
I didn't hear this morning, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I was a little bit concerned about the chronology of a change within the agency that then later went back to, it was quoted in the testimony as saying, now we need to update the law to match the policy and procedures.
Yep.
That concerned me as a legislative role, but I'm not sure where we go with that. I didn't sense an intent to not do what the law said. It's a cleanup sort of after the fact, and these people weren't here when that happened. But there's something about that testimony that I felt like we needed to dig into, but I'm not sure how or what we would need to change at this point. I'm not.
Right, specifically was around this.
It was
in B, right? Around the equipment.
Somebody went out of their way to, yes, thank you, manager, to say exactly how many vehicles there was going to be. There was some pretty significant details, and now we're wiping them out. But we'd already changed our policy and procedures, even though the law was already there. It was still there, and there's.
So I just remember, Anthea, maybe you can help. You said when we first walked through the bill that some of this was legacy language also. I think there are 2 pieces of it. Like one is the changes in that Representative Walker was asked about was in subsection B that had to do with, I think, the crossing out of the language about the replacement of highway maintenance equipment and making it replacement equipment. Because the testimony that we received was that the reality is that the central garage serves more than just the highway division, and this aligns with current practice.
Airport.
Things like the airport. So I just want to, and then in the next, later in that section, there's more language crossed out. And I had made a note, and maybe this might be helpful to hear more about that. Some of this was legacy language is what I wrote. And I think that there had been some work done in the past and that this just wasn't caught. But do you have any history on that might help?
Okay, so I don't have any history on this that might help, but I certainly can look into the legislative history and provide a little bit of a chronology in terms of how the statute has changed, maybe do a side-by-side that has like the different iterations of amendment over the years. But I will say that I'm not sure how much value that has in terms of what you are being asked to do by the agency now, which is to make it so that statute reflects current practice. And Representative Walker, I think you have identified what is probably a very common frustration of the people who make the law, which is, well, the law says this is what should be happening. You shouldn't have changed the policy or the practice in a way that was inconsistent with the law. You should have changed the law to allow you to change the policy or practice. But I think in reality, it doesn't always happen in that linear way, which is why you're hearing from the agency now. But even if it's just, useful information, if you get questions on the floor, I'm happy to try and pull something together that provides a little bit more clarity on the legislative history. It is not something that I have now, but it should be relatively easy to pull together.
And I'm not looking to make her do more. That's not going to get us to a different place than where we need to go.
Okay.
And so
I will say that I'm now curious, so I might do it anyway.
Well, I mean, the people made a rule or a law for a reason, and part of this about what the central garage was or wasn't going to do. And one of the parts here now is allows, during the testimony, I did a big note on here when the central garage leader testified, he wants the ability to buy some very large lifts and bring in large equipment and things that he's doing for repairs, or already has done that. And that was not the intent of the original language. So we're not going to re-legislate it back to the spot.
You're raising a point, but I guess now we're here. Are we supportive of what they're doing? Do we think, we've heard that the way that they run their maintenance is different than what it's been? They need to get lifts, are we okay with that? I mean, I think are we okay with them, with the substance of this being that, the replacement of equipment is it's the equipment that they have because we fund them to take care of our airports and other things. So I think you raised a really important kind of larger philosophical question. And I saw the smile on Anthea's face. She's going to look into it because she's going to drill down on that. So that's what she can help us with. But just going back to this section, are people okay with this? Are people feeling like that we support what the folks at the Central Garage are doing, and that this would be the changes would be made?
And Madam Chair, you clarified it exactly very well.
Okay. I want to make sure we're getting these questions out because, it's good that we're having the discussion because our colleagues are expecting us to have these kinds of discussions. So we vet it here. We can bring this bill to the floor and we can answer the questions. And you'll give me this section.
Well, and if you're going to dig into it, you're going to all try to add things to the bill and you're going to add things in here and then you have no assurance that it won't happen.
All right.
You say we'll let you go first and you can put everybody to sleep.
But we'll get there later. All right. So, but this is a couple pages. Is everybody? We spent some time this morning. But is this? Are we good with this section? All right. Another check mark. Next. This is good. This is great. Good. All right. So I think we are now up to section 7.
Yep, section 7, page 8. This is the one change in the maximum grant amount under the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program, going from $300,000 to $600,000. This is federal money, a federal grant program. The amount of money that the state is getting for the program has increased, and the agency is recommending that the grant allocation ceiling also increase. And I think you heard testimony about how the projects are more expensive and things like that. And I'm happy to talk about what sort of projects are covered under here, but I think you've heard substantial testimony on the program.
Good. I think I also made a note that that we might consider a sunset as it's connected with IIJA. That might be something for us to consider.
I also have that written in the margin of my earlier draft.
So maybe I'll break into are people comfortable with raising the cap? That doesn't mean that $600,000 is the grant amount, but we did hear testimony that the cost of these projects is increasing, and that with the doubling of the money, that they wanted to double the cap. So I'm looking around, I see nods. Are there questions about that?
I mean, I agree though, because I think I suggested that, but I think this should coincide with the federal bill. Because we don't know if that money is going to be there, and if not, then if it does get cut back in half, 600,000 is probably going to give you 2 projects. So
right.
I think take another fresh look at it.
So so to do that, we would you're suggesting that we add a sunset clause?
Sunset, yeah, for the length of
that connects with. How do other folks feel about adding a sunset clause? Okay, I think there's agreement. Yeah,
very clean.
So I guess that would be something that we could add, Anthea.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So the way it'll look is, instead of it being like such and so is sunsetted, or such and so is repealed, there will be a second section that comes after this one. I'll have a reader assistance heading making it clear, like this is the one to be effective on this date. And then that section will strike out 600,000 and add back in 300,000, and that'll be effective in the future. And I'll just need to work with Chris and the agency to figure out what the appropriate sunset date for that would be.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just so the committee's aware, we can obligate these IIJA funds in the framework of the obligational period of the program, the IIJA program. But we will have awarded grants that will likely be continuing past that period as they get built, and that sort of thing.
So we'll just, if we do this, we'll just, we'll just want to make sure that that it's crafted in a way that enables us to do that. And, for the new members of the committee, a sunset usually means that it's something that will come back before the committee to check in on it, before it's sunset, and our attorneys help us track that, and keep track of that. So this is just a way for us to have a check back in on it.
All right. So I just, for my own clarification, I think what you're trying to say is we may award money in 2025 and the sunset is, July 1 of 2025, but the money hasn't been spent yet. Okay, so somehow saying that those awards prior to that date are grandfathered or something, okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think, I don't know that we need to address it in the bill, it's more of a cash flow management thing, talked about on other items, and so, but just for awareness.
Okay.
So is that rendered section 7, okay?
So
we're going to get into section for the sunset.
can you speak up so that everyone can hear?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that renders section 7 okay? Because the sunset will be in section 8 for a new section.
It'll be section 7A for the time being, but yeah.
That was the question.
Good. All right, so I think folks are comfortable with that, and we'll do that sunset. Great. You have a question for the judge?
Yeah, just can I just add, is this on line 14, section 7, and then it says line 15C, did we? Oh.
Yeah.
So only 19 VSA section 38 subsection C is being amended, which is why you don't see subsections A or B. And I actually think there's a D in the section as well, which you also don't see.
For new folks, ... means there's language ahead of that. And that's why that's a C. Did I get that right? AJ?
Well, I mean, yes, that is what the 3 stars means. But if from a drafting perspective, if you were to have the 3 stars, you would need to say 19 VSA section 38 is amended to read. But since it's just saying section 38 subsection C is amended to read, and that's just to save space in the bill and not include language that was necessary for purposes of what was being proposed. If you think from a explanation on the floor perspective that you need to have subsections A and B, I can add them in. But what I wouldn't do was strike the C on line 14 just to add in the 3 stars to say that something has been omitted. You can tell that language is missing because it's not the full section that's being amended here.
So, I mean, we might decide that depending on the issue, yeah, that we would add that, if I could, so that our colleagues.
I can pull up the balance of it if you want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, why don't, this is a good time to look at that. And we can decide. We're making decisions.
Yeah.
We're on a roll. No, it's
I
okay.
didn't mean to get
No,
us.
no,
No, this is the time to do it. This is
Okay. I don't think it would help anyone to know that subsections A and B had been repealed. What you might want to include is language on D, E, F, and G after that language.
That's great. All right. Excellent. That's good to get the answers in real time like this.
No, what was A and B?
Yeah. So, okay, thank you. And once again, demonstrating how we can, it's pretty, I know you like to demonstrate how we can look into
Ourselves,
and, well, just how we can dig into the statute, so.
All the useful stuff on the website.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so I think we're up to section 8, the vehicle incentive programs. Now, yeah, I think there are a few chunks. Okay, we're getting, yeah, So Jeannie, is this Jeannie's handing out
Yeah,
that?
I think now's the right time to switch to that document. I'll just mention, to refresh everyone's memory, that what Section 8 is doing is repealing the prior session law that created the vehicle incentive programs as they exist now. And then Section 9, which the chart helps with, is what's proposed by the agency to be added as codified law to the green books. And what's being handed out is a new comparison document. You might remember from when I did the walkthrough of draft 1.5, I had a couple charts that showed what session law was and what codified law was proposed by the agency in draft 1.5. This is sort of taking that prior document, which was very long, and the actual just like substance of the law itself, and instead trying to sort of have some general big picture. This is what session law is. This is how it's being proposed to be changed in a chart form that is not covering everything that is in the session law or the proposed codified law, just the big picture pieces as more of a resource. I prepared this document, but Patrick has reviewed it and didn't see anything that he thought needed to change for purposes of the conversation that the committee is going to have. And I would leave it to the committee as to how I could best help in that discussion.
Yeah. So just maybe we can unpack it at a few, like, what's being proposed here, right, is that we're codifying our programs into law. It's been in session law, putting it in the statute. So when this...
Do you want me to just start walking through the chart and then maybe it'll become clear how you want to have the conversation go?
Yeah, I think the chart is easier to understand the changes than in the language. Do other folks agree that the chart is a useful tool?
Okay, I'll walk through the chart then.
Let's do that.
Okay, so the way the chart is laid out is all the way to the left is just like the big picture thing that's being talked about in that row of the chart. The column in the middle is going to be current law. So what is in the session law that's proposed to be repealed in Section 8, and then the column all the way to the right, that is what is proposed new law to be codified, and it reflects draft 2.2, so the version of the T-bill that you're working through now. And then I have sort of subject headings as you go through. So the first thing we're going to talk about is some general provisions. First one there is the type of law. Under what exists now, session law, lots of amendments over the years, and they're all listed there. The new version, what the agency is proposing, would be codified law, and it would be 19 VSA Chapter 29. Your second general provisions piece is on definitions. And for purposes of how the programs have utilized definitions in the past, there were definitions that were included in the T-bill that first year, and then they were included as needed in session law. The agency's proposal now has a definition section. It would be 19 VSA section 2901. So it would be in codified law with definitions that would be applicable to just that chapter of Title 19. One of the things I will say when I was talking to the agency about this was there was a question about, does this fit more in Title 23, which is more of the DMV side of things, or does it fit more in Title 19, which is more of the Agency of Transportation, but like the roads and the grant programs and things like that side of things? This would be in Title 19. And some of the definitions, like the definition of a plug-in electric vehicle and an electric bicycle, exist in Title 23, which is why a number of the definition sections that you see, if you're actually looking at the bill language itself, say that this term, like electric bicycle, has the same meaning as in 23 VSA Section 4 subdivision, et cetera. You need to do that because those are definitions that are applicable to Title 23, and this language would be going into Title 19. But the definitions that would be added are the things that are used throughout the programs: electric bicycle, electric cargo bicycle, plug-in electric vehicle, which includes your battery electric vehicles and your plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And then that's it on the terms that are proposed by the agency to be defined in this version of the T-bill.
Why don't we pause there for just a minute?
Sure.
So, because I think we're going to really quickly get into the weeds, which we do need to get into. But I want to ask the bigger question. Is the committee supportive of the idea of codifying these vehicle incentive programs into law, state law, like into the green books? We've had these programs in session law and we're moving them into codified law. So that's because if people are against that, then we can stop here. But are folks okay with that concept? Representative Burke.
I'm in favor. I think it reflects that they're going to institutionalize.
Yes. Great.
They've been very successful. Helping us to meet our goals and helping people to get into better transportation.
Main difference is just it's easier to find, right, Anthea?
Yes.
I mean, that just it's the same full force and effect. It's just somebody wants to find it, it's easier.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to my presentation that I do, like the transportation primer overview. Session law, codified law, both law. Codified law is easier to find, and codified law is easier to amend and have people see what the amendments are. Because if you look in the back of the green books and you see the supplement, that doesn't include just like subsection A with this one word struck out, and then you're like, but I don't see how this all fits together. It recreates the entire section when there is an amendment, so you can see it all in one place. And it's the green books as they're amended from year to year that is what's available in Westlaw and easy to find, what's posted to the website and easy to find. So you are not making it more law, you're just making it easier to find, easier to track, and I think probably easier to follow on an ongoing basis.
Excellent. Yeah. So are folks on board with this?
Well, I just need to say something, because last year I was literally violating against codifying the laws, the current law that's we're asking. You really had a real problem with that last year because of the way the language was written. The proposed language had dollars in it, if I remember that correctly. And I was not on board with codifying money in the green books. It's to me, it's a very strange practice. So this language, I'm way more interested in codifying it because it gives a broader, I think it gives a broader view of the program, and agree with the idea that it's easier to find in green books than it is. But I want to see what the language says. Not what I hear.
And we're about to do that. All right, others, but thank you for that. All right, I think I'm seeing,
I mean, it's all regardless of where it is.
right,
And if there's no money to incentivize vehicles, then we don't incentivize.
right. So, right, to remind to your point, I mean, we've talked about this as a committee, just because we're codifying it, we still have to put the money in for the program to run, and vice versa, right? So, meaning that we can put money in, it doesn't need to be codified. So I just want to check in on that first level, and then we can go on, because the proposal is not just that we take what has up until recently. I mean, there's some changes that are being proposed as well in this process. So the committee's on board with codifying, and we're going to walk through this very detailed 5-page chart. And we'll get through. This might take us a little bit of time. And
I guess my question first and foremost is, are we codifying these 5 pages that we haven't gone through yet?
no,
Oh, okay.
I'm stopping. No, I
We're just doing the
check in, like, just with the concept that that people are okay with moving forward with codifying. And now we're gonna go with the idea of, I'm speaking too fast. But the committee is on board with putting our vehicle incentive programs that have been in session law, putting them into the green books. And now we're about to go, if that's okay, then now we're gonna go through, and there's some changes and things that are being proposed. So we're gonna go through this.
See what
And
language.
what we're going to be going through now will be codified. That's my question. So within this, as I look, there are dollar figures.
So there are not dollar figures in the right column in the proposed new law piece.
Okay, so what I'm looking at on page 11.
Are you looking at the chart or are you
Oh,
looking?
I'm looking at the bill itself.
Okay, so where you're seeing numbers are
Yeah.
for things like, this is what the income eligibility is, or this is what the base MSRP is. What you are not seeing are the codification of appropriations for a particular fiscal year.
So when it's in yellow, that means it's not going to be in the bill.
I don't know what document you're looking at.
I'm looking at draft 2.2, page 11, shall provide not more than one incentive of not more than $3,000 for us.
That's not an appropriation, that's an incentive amount. So there are dollars for
We are going to
incentive
codify
amount.
the incentive amount.
Yeah, but we're not.
That is the agency's proposal.
Dollars to run a program.
Okay, but not the dollars that may or may not be there to appropriate to.
Right.
We haven't had the discussion yet whether that's the right thing.
Right, okay.
And then one thing I will say in that sort of discussion is, in addition to the fact that just because it's codified as a program doesn't mean you need to appropriate money for it. Just because it's not codified as a program doesn't mean you can't appropriate money for it. So for example, in this proposed language from the agency, you'll see that they're proposing to create the Electrify Your Fleet program, but they're not proposing to codify the e-bike incentives. You could choose to add the e-bike incentives to the codified language. You could also choose to take the Electrify Your Fleet out of the codified language because you think that maybe it doesn't have the same longevity as the other programs, and maybe it's something that needs to happen, as a one-time appropriation, $500,000 to kickstart things. Those are all the sorts of policy decisions that you can make as you work through it. So just because one program is codified doesn't mean they all need to be codified. And just because one program is getting money appropriated to it in session law doesn't mean you can't do that with other programs. So lots of different iterations of how you could get to an end result.
So I'm looking at the clock, and and Anthea, how much? Right, I mean, I'm looking at the number of pages in the bill, and I'm wondering with the committee if this is gonna take more than 25 minutes to go through this. And I know how my brain works, that it's hard to stop this kind of, in mid-chart. So I'm wondering if we should skip over, now that because if we could skip over to later, and we'll come back to this when we have a bigger swath of time. Does that make sense?
So I think that is going to take you to section 15 on page 25. So section
Yeah, go ahead.
15 is also probably a big topic.
Maybe we better go on that.
Let's just go home.
Let's go home. But I wonder though, I would like to get the sense of the temperature in the committee on this, because the mileage-based user fee. So why don't we tackle it, and if we get tripped up, we can come back to it. But I think I'd just like to get a sense.
This is for electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Right.
Only.
Yeah, why don't I let Anthea do her part of it, and then I'll just offer something.
Okay. So you want me to start walking through the mileage-based user fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's try.
So your mileage-based user fee, this is all session law. Doesn't change the fact that it's law, but it is important to note that nothing is proposed to be codified now, because the entire premise of what you're working on is the agency's proposal to have something prepared and codified to be implemented on July 1 of 2025. So a lot of what you have is direction to agency with reporting back from agency, and then you are putting yourselves in a position to make decisions in the 2024 legislative session, and then potentially for yourselves or for the next General Assembly in another biennium to make changes one final time before this process moves forward as what the state is actually doing to collect money for the use of roads effective July 1, 2025. So remember that as we're talking about all of this. Nothing is happening immediately. There's going to be reporting back, and the General Assembly will need to make decisions then. So first up, subsection A. Within the agency's proposed transportation program, the White Book, for this fiscal year that starts July 1 of 2023, fiscal year 2024, you are you're directing the agency to apply for and accept a competitive Federal Strategic Innovation for Revenue Collection grant, which is established under the IIJA, in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million in federal money, with up to $350,000 to be used for the non-federal match in this fiscal year 2024. If the agency gets that full $3.5 million grant, then the $350,000 is not the full non-federal match. You will need to have a non-federal match portion in fiscal year 25. But subsection A is saying, go get the grant, don't have it exceed this amount. We're authorizing this much in transportation fund dollars for the non-federal match.
So I think that I was taking some notes. So this is a good, is that a pause here to?
Yeah, that was a pause. Yeah. An intentional pause, but I can keep going if you don't want me to pause.
No, I was hoping that it was a real pause, so good. So I just want to check in with the committee to make sure the committee understands what's going on here. This is not, if we support this, it doesn't mean that we are adopting a mileage-based user fee. What we're doing is we're allowing the agency to allow the DMV to apply for and accept a grant through it's one of the grants offered through the IIJA to study this and come back to us. So with a proposal next year, there is a financial implication with this, right? Like it's because they'll need, to apply for this grant, we need to have a state match for it. And for fiscal year, my understanding is fiscal year 24, it's a $350,000. But also that means it's not just if we give them the permission to do this or support for this, it means that it's 350 this year, and I'm assuming, is it 350 next year?
Yes.
So it's not like we can say only 350 and then, next year, we're not willing to do that. So I just wanted to pause here to see, like, if there's no appetite for doing this at all, ever, then we would say we don't support this. But if we want to have the agency come back with something, then next year we'll be deciding it. So Representative Bartholomew.
The piece that has me confused is it says design and implement. How does implement mean come back and get guidance on whether or not to do it? Maybe that's what that means, but it's not clear to me how implement means something else besides implement.
Okay, so let me, Michelle, would you like to respond to that?
I guess I would like to respond just in the sense that in order to apply for this money and have the application be viable, the federal government wants to know that we are receiving this money not to just pilot something, not to just see what we think about it, they want us to sort of move to a program. That's the purpose of the funds. So having the language in statute indicating that we will implement will be a key piece of our grant application. I think there are other constraints that you can, put around the language relative to when and how we implement it, or the program shall not be implemented until the agency reports back, and things like that. But it would be important to have that term in there.
Does it say that later?
I don't think it does. I'm not sure that we structured the language that way. I'm pointing out that maybe you want to. Yeah.
Well,
So there is intent language, I believe, that talks about how it's to be effective on July 1 of 2025. It is the intent of the General Assembly that starting on July 1, 2025, PHEVs will be so yeah, you could say it is the intent that there be a mileage-based user fee for battery electric vehicles. In addition to it is the intent that there be the 1.75 escalator on the plug-in hybrids for the registration fee.
Go ahead, Butch.
Did we hear there was a trigger in the GWSA for when we can start doing this?
So the trigger is in the climate plan. The climate plan directs that we should not implement a fee to replace the gas tax on electric vehicles until there are 15,000 new vehicles registered in the state. So we are about 9,000 right now.
And so, just to put a fine point on that, by the time this would be implemented, you anticipate that we would be at that number?
I think we'll be beyond that number, but yes, that is the plan to time these appropriately.
So that's what I think that's what the testimony said, that about the time this comes will be about the time. Is it 15,000 or 15%?
I thought it was 15%.
I'm sorry, 15%.
Yeah, so it's 15%,
We're
which,
giving too many numbers.
yeah, so-
50%, yeah.
Of what?
I feel strongly we need to do this, that we need to capture the usage of electric cars on the roads. And we're gonna have to do it at some point or another, so it seems like good timing to work on this. It does sort of define kind of how it will be done, but I think we saw some other testimony that said it had been studied closely, and this seems, the sort of least, the easiest process to employ.
I have a couple of questions. I think Patty, you had your hand up, and then Representative McCoy and Representative Burke.
Okay, so 15% of what?
Okay, I'll come over.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We have a big,
15% of.
so it's 15% of new vehicles sold
Okay.
in the current year. So right now,
Okay.
we actually have almost 9,000 vehicles sold, new vehicles sold, or registered, but we're also at about 8 or 9% in terms of new vehicles purchased in the last reporting year were electric vehicles.
Okay. And then I do agree with Representative Pouch that, we have to start. We have to start somehow. And this one seems like the most reasonable one. And since Google can know where I call and what I do, I'm sure Google can do how much mileage my car is running in the course of the year too. So.
We have a couple of questions, yeah. Okay, so I saw Representative Burke and then Representative Campbell, Representative Dodge.
I just need to bring up something Michelle knows about. It was brought up by a constituent of mine who lives in Brattleboro, has an electric vehicle, drives quite a bit out of state. And he's pretty upset that that he would be paying for driving, just bringing this up.
Yep, that's a question, yeah.
That he would be driving in another state, and that people driving into Vermont from other states would not be paying anything. So that's the gist of his concern.
I think Michelle,
Yeah.
Michelle's going to respond to that.
Yeah, and the gist of that is that's the same system we have now. If you live in Brattleboro and you gas up and you go to Boston, you've just paid the tax and driven on another state. Or if you live in Boston, you gas up and you come to Vermont, you're not buying gas here. So it's as equitable as we can get it, given the level of technology we want to develop at this time for the return on investment. Similarly, that's why we're not advancing the taxation at the public charging station currently, because the cost to capture what would be about $5,000 in annual revenue for today's fleet is not worth the hundreds of thousands or millions that it's going to take to stand that up.
So, and just a reminder to the committee, we're not making a decision about what the policy is yet. This is about a decision to like allow them, the DMV, to go forward with a grant to be able to come back to us with more detailed plan. But Representative Campbell and Representative Dodge.
Yeah.
And
So
Representative Bartholomew, if I had that right. So.
I see the value in doing this, but I am concerned about capturing the, I think it was something like 25% of the gas tax now, we think comes from people gassing up from out of state, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
25%.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it has to be in here, but I do want to explore the option of applying a fee to the DC fast chargers only. Because that seems like the appropriate place to do that. And it's not, nothing's perfect here, but that's better than nothing.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, this morning we were testifying on this topic in Senate Transportation, and when Patrick Murphy was giving the presentation, and I didn't realize this until he was talking about this very thing, like the measure. So part of being able to to collect a fee from a user of a fast charger, a level 2 charger, whatever, is that the Agency of Agriculture Weights and Measures needs to be able to assure that the kilowatts coming from that device and going into your vehicle are the ones, that you're getting what you're paying for. And apparently there is not a measurement device that's been approved by NIST, which is the standards group, that is able to verify that for fast chargers yet. I'm sure it's coming, but it's not there yet on a national level. So even if we wanted to do that, it would be not possible at this time. But I think we will get there eventually. And at some point, the number of vehicles are going to be such that it will be cost effective to implement a system. The data we get from so Burlington Electric Department and Green Mountain Power have stations where people pay by credit card. So they know like where the zip code is of that credit card for use for the charging station. And both the data, and they know whether the charge, Quebec, New England, Vermont, wherever. So they've done the analysis, and it backs up what we had also heard, which was a little more anecdotal from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development a few years back, that they had said it was about 26% of the purchase would be for out of state. Well, this newer data does verify that it's 25% on average between the two utilities. And on the number of vehicles and the kilowatt hours collected, whatever was sort of in that data dump, it's about $5,000 that was collected in that particular year from out-of-state charges. It's really amazing.
For those two utilities.
Yeah.
For those two utilities for 1 year, a total of $5,000.
But there's other.
It would be the gas, equivalent.
Well, but that's just.
No, this is for this is an extrapolation to all of the vehicles that we believe would be using those public charging stations, not just the ones that use those two. I'm sorry for that confusion.
So, yeah, okay, I hear you.
Sooner or later, we gotta get there.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to get there, and we're planning, this is 2 years away, so I guess
We would probably do well doing one thing well at a time, just to be blunt. I mean, just in terms of our staffing resources, the complexity of standing up a new program like this, communicating it to the public, et cetera. I think in terms of the resource availability and the return on investment, during this period of transitional time, that if we were to finish the first project and then move to the second project, we'd probably have gained some technological opportunities with the public charging stations.
I have one last question, if I may, just about what we think the impact on the average EV driver might be. We talked about that.
Yeah, it's, on average, a person driving 12,000 miles a year who has an all-electric vehicle would be paying about $150 in state gas tax replacement. They won't have a federal tax replacement, so they're saving money there.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Right. I'm aware of the time, and I think,
I'm more likely to support this when it has that kind of money attached to it, that kind of budget level of $150 for, just because we don't want it to be a disincentive, or to hit people who are driving farther just because they can't afford to place,
so we're not there yet, I'm pulling the committee back in because we have 10 minutes left, and I would love to get a sense. I mean, I think we're getting closer. I mean, this is gonna be the kinds of things that we can ask when they come back, and they're important questions, but I was just getting to I was getting to like my unease with doing this, because we are committing to some degree, spending $700,000 and to get the grant to, all this, to even look into it is a commitment. And I'm just saying a reason why I am for committing that, and looking into other ways of funding transportation, but that is a much bigger question. But you're looking forward to getting the details, is what I'm hearing,
Yeah.
also just to get, when we get that. So Representative Bartholomew and then Representative Lally.
Well, yeah, there's clearly no perfect system, and one of the realities in my area is I buy most of my gas across the river because that's where the gas stations are, and I drive most of my miles in Vermont, so it's a problem. I think that we do need to say in here that 15% level. I would like to see that in here because it really then it points to a legislative intent that once we reach that level, we have to recover the money. So I'd like to see that in the language. But I also, I don't think I'd be able to support this unless it really clearly states that agency develops a plan for implementation and a plan for what it's going to be, but that there's some sort of a legislative action to implement before we move forward. And if that's not in here, I don't think I'm going to be able to support it.
So you're not authorizing them to do this. You're authorizing them to design and implement it, but it's not law. There's nothing that says, DMB, you can charge this new fee. This is either a fee or a tax, and that's created by the General Assembly. You're not delegating that authority away. You're telling them to figure out what it is that you're going to need to put in law to delegate that or to implement that. So I don't know if that is necessary given, what the Constitution says
Maybe not, but it does say design and implement.
Okay. We can add the language, but
I'm hearing that you're uncomfortable with the word implementation.
Well,
and because of what
just explain why it's important that the implement word be in there, but at some point it needs to explain what implementation will look like, and the fact that we will get a briefing about how it's going to be done and get to approve it is the part that I want to make sure is clearly stated.
It's in the language.
I think I just because I just want to make sure that it is in the language, and I think that Anthea, help me out a little bit. I think that was in the, I'm just swimming in language. The page, is it on?
Right here, page 20.
Sorry, I'm scrolling, I'm looking for it. I don't remember there being something specific that says the General Assembly needs to act or they can't proceed until the General Assembly acts.
That's right, that's what, I think it's on page 28, line 8, is that it?
And it says, well, you've got at the top, effective date, the agency shall design and implement a process to collect a mileage-based user fee to commence collecting revenue on July 1, 2025.
Further down, that page line 14, says agency shall design and implement a process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there are places where it alludes to it, but if you want something more specific, you can certainly have me draft something more specific.
Yeah, I think that's what we'd like to do. I think I'm seeing, look around the table, that would be,
That's the intent. So
yeah. And I'm seeing that would be, there's,
Yeah.
Michelle's on board with that. So if that can be something. All right, and so Representative Lally,
Yes, I just wanted, it's a kind of a math question, so I support this, you know, we need a pathway and it needs to be, I'm glad we're seeking expert help for this. I just wanted to be clear, is the entire thing that we're looking for actually a $7 million appropriation over 2 years? Or it sounded like there was maybe we could expect 350 for 2 years.
So the entire project cost is anticipated to be about $3.5 million. And 20% of that $3.5 million is our responsibility. So cut in half, that's $350 per year.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's where that came from. Thanks, okay.
So I just have.
Go ahead.
So if we leave the language as it is right now, but we put somewhere in here, one sentence says, it's the intent of the legislature for the agency to come back for the General Assembly to vote on the results of the study or whatever they're gonna come up with. Would that do it or no? If you need the word implement in there.
well, how about we let Anthea, I think this is one of the great things that she's able to be here. I think, Anthea, I'm seeing you nod.
Yes, I would rather just work on language. than
Yeah.
Answer questions about is one sentence sufficient.
Heard the concerns of the committee and that will be reflected in language. So if it's we're good.
And we would have to be the ones who decide what that final number is. We're sort of estimating, it's the same as the gas tax, roughly this number, but that might be something to look at when we get to it, what that number actually is.
So, okay, well, no, this was good. I'm glad we got to kind of have this conversation. Also, Michelle's gonna be away next week, so this was.
Yeah, I won't be in the room. I'll be in DC meeting with our congressional staff and some of the new ones and some of the old friends and dealing with my colleagues nationally.
Yeah. Well, so this was great. So I'm glad that you were able to be here because I feel like we were able to get.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some revised language coming into us, but I feel like we made it to a good place. So I think with that, we know we have to come back to do the electric vehicle section, but and we'll do that. I think probably next week is the next time on Tuesdays we'll have, so.
Yeah.
So you'll.
My colleague, Costa Pappas, will be available in the committee room and he can get you any questions answered you need.
Excellent. I'm sure Patrick will be here.
And Patrick too.
Well, with that, thanks everybody. Thank you, Anthea, for joining us and with that, we can end our live stream
And your Christmas.